It seems like everyone is arguing about whether Young Miami's new song is good for us. That's the wrong argument. The real story is what happens after a song like this blows up and what never gets built because of it. And underneath that is a much bigger problem we don't say out loud enough. We treat black culture like it only has one note to play. And every time we accept that framing, we lose more than an argument. We lose money, we lose institutional access, and we let somebody else write down who we are. Quick recap, no side taking. Spin that charts. India.Arie raises a values critique, gets pushback, partially walks it back. A wave of veteran Miami rap voices fire back hard. Everybody's picked a side in a fight about taste. I want to skip that fight entirely because, frankly, taste was never the problem. Here's the actual mechanism. White mainstream culture gets treated like a buffet. Full stop. Country, indie rock, prestige drama, teen pop, adult contemporary, true crime, art house film, all of it running at the same time, all of it funded at the same time, none of it required to represent the whole of white America. Nobody assumes Zach Bryan speaks for every white listener, the way one song gets treated as a referendum on all of us. Black culture, by contrast, keeps getting served like a diet, one dominant note at a time. And whatever's popular that year gets treated as the whole plate. That's not a metaphor about taste. That's a description of how funding actually flows. You can see this in the institutions themselves, not just the audience reaction. For 7 years, the Grammys ran a category literally called Best Urban Contemporary Album, a catch-all that could hold Miguel, SZA, Rihanna, Frank Ocean, Chris Brown, anyone who was black and not easily filed elsewhere regardless of what genre they were actually making. Multiple artists said publicly that this collapsed genre bending, pop, alternative, and traditional R&B into a single bucket because the industry shorthand for black music was, well, black and not the actual sound. The Academy didn't rename it to Progressive R&B until 2020 after years of that criticism. That's not a taste problem. That's an institution literally building one box and putting everyone in it. Now put a number on what that costs. Ray Charles proved country music's crossover appeal in 1962. It took until 2024, 62 years later, for Beyoncé and Shaboozey to top the hot country chart back-to-back, with Shaboozey's record-tying run at #1 landing as an independent release, no major label behind it. 62 years between proof and payoff isn't an audience failing to develop taste. That's 6 decades of an industry declining to build the infrastructure, the radio formats, the marketing budgets that would have made that crossover normal instead of historic. Same story with festivals. Essence actually ran a sister festival in Durban, South Africa back in 2016, built specifically to give Pan-African audiences their own space instead of folding a global identity into the New Orleans flagship. It lasted 2 years and quietly disappeared. Afropunk did the opposite. Real standing editions in Atlanta, London, Johannesburg, Dakar. Same parent company owns both. One built the infrastructure, the other had it in hand and let it go cold. Same story in film and television. Get Out proved black horror had real commercial teeth. For about 5 years, you had Lovecraft Country, Watchmen, Them, Luke Cage, Black Lightning, a genuine spread of genre and tone, real range. Now the funded lane has narrowed back down to 2 or 3 safe, bankable aesthetics. The proof of concept didn't fail, the reinvestment did. Here's why all of this actually matters past the culture pages. Black households currently hold about 3.5% of the country's wealth, while white households hold roughly 83%, despite black Americans making up close to 14% of the population. Median black household wealth sits at around $45,000 against $285,000 for the median white household. Black Americans are approved for credit at dramatically lower rates than white applicants for the same requests. Roughly half of black applicants get denied or underapproved compared to about a quarter of white applicants. Homeownership, business equity, retirement savings, every one of those gaps traces back to the same root problem: access to capital and access to the institutions that decide who gets funded and who doesn't. Cultural industries, music, film, festivals, media, are some of the only wealth building lanes where black creators have historically been able to build real equity without needing a bank's permission first. Publishing rights, ownership stakes, brand equity, institutional access. When only one aesthetic gets consistently funded, that's not just an artistic loss. That's an entire wealth building lane getting narrowed down to a single door in an economy where every other door is already harder for us to walk through. And there's a second cost that's harder to put a number on, but just as real. When the one note that gets amplified is the hustle economy record, that becomes the aggregate image, the thing employers, landlords, and loan officers half consciously carry into every interaction with us, whether they admit it or not. Meanwhile, the country legacy, the neo-soul catalog, the horror auteurs, the festival infrastructure, all of it still exists. All of it still has an audience, but it doesn't get to shape the picture because it isn't the thing being reinvested in that year. We're not one note. We never were. But if the only note anyone keeps funding is the loudest one, we start to look like it from the outside, and that distortion has a price tag, even if nobody puts it on an invoice. So here's the actual fix. And it was never about a boycott. It's a wider room, held open on purpose. Every time culture proves a new lane works, black country, black horror, black avant-garde, black adult contemporary hip-hop, the job isn't to declare victory and move to the money to the next single hit. It's to keep the door open long enough for it to become normal instead of historic. Ownership is power. Investment is legacy. Subscribe if you want more of the economics today nobody's putting in the headline.